not sure because I get involved in these conversations via Teams call only, but I have heard there was sometimes some physical actions involved.
Yeah, so from what I remember, we've never had those moments where any one of us were about to punch someone in the neck because of an argument. But most of those intense arguments often leads to door smashes, wall punches, and I don't think there's anything serious than that. However, after those arguments, we had to have a lot of cool down times where we literally just leave the room and just go around town to cool our heads down. That was a time when we had 5 members around you, and since 2 of them have graduated and we mostly do video calls, we rarely have such moments. However, we still have intense arguments, but conversations about doors or walls from where I stay on campus rarely exist now.
I think the new trend now is that if any of us feel unhappy from what objective view we decide to express, we just leave the team's meetings.
However, that does not mean that we don't have any conversations with door smashes or wall punches this year.
And in fact, I believe we just had one where you literally smashed your room's door whilst heading out for a cool down. Five votes for, and only 1 against. And with that, our decision is to proceed with the discussion and production.
Since all of you have decided to continue producing this episode, I have no other choice but to respect the majority vote. However, I'm making myself clear to all of you. As of right now, I will not participate in any of the discussions regarding this topic, and I will not contribute anything towards the production of this episode. Even if you guys ask me to provide any ideas or materials for this, you will not get any response from me. I don't think any of you understand how sensitive some of the fans are when talking about this topic. I can already see, once we publicize this episode, the criticisms and hatred comments will start flying in. I don't know if you guys see how serious this is, but maybe to you all, there is no difference. Because you are all responsible for either what we upload to YouTube, and I am the one taking all the criticisms and complaints. You guys can choose whatever way you want this episode to run, but you guys will take the responsibility on what you say. Sorry, but I have to leave now.
Well, I could understand why Henry is so pissed about doing this topic, but we must move on. Now, for this episode, here is how I have organized on... What was that?
Henry just smashed the door as he left. That day, I was at Henry's accommodation, and Jack was there too. And we have never seen Henry so pissed off before. What I mean by that, it wasn't the first time when we have heated arguments like this, but Henry was never this angry when we were making this series, not even once. He was just so against the idea of making this episode, and seeing him leave and smashing the door shows how annoyed he was.
The following day, I texted Henry to make sure that he was emotionally okay. He was fine alright, but when I wrote to him about what we were doing for this episode, he did not even read my messages. By the time he read 6 days later, I thought he was going to respond, but turns out he only asked whether Bella and I are watching the premiere of the newest Hunger Games episode.
To be honest, Jack, Danny, and I do not understand why Henry is so sensitive about us making an episode on this topic.
Well, all of us didn't understand why at first. And the production of this episode was probably the hardest of them all. as we did not have him helping us out or participating discussions on this episode's topic. But when we started to dive deeper into some of the research on this topic, some of the matters that Yusuke and I found out wasn't just only what we could possibly say, but they also relate to Henry's sensitivity regarding this topic.
What does it feel like being on the interview chair for the first time?
I am really excited. Waited this moment long enough. Just one moment though, let me send a message to Henry. Okay, let's get started. My name is Jack, and I am the new interview in Hunger Games: A Rising Gossip. To me, I see the Hunger Games as not only a reality show or a way to spend the Sunday. There's something much more interesting to it. There's something oddly familiar about the Hunger Games to another interest of mine: motorsport racing. The pressure, the timing, the way a single move can throw off the entire team. It feels somewhat similar. Every element of the show embodies a little bit of the qualities we see in motorsport, including our hosts. And if there's anyone on this show who sometimes demonstrates such qualities to the extreme, it would have to be this man.
Zax Wang, co-lead singer of Juniori Star Office's boys band, 5566. Not only successful as an entertainer, but also family and business-wise. He joined the Hunger Games host group alongside his lifelong brothers, Tony and Jason, from the very beginning. He is known to be the most cunning host of the five. His main strength is the battle of wits, while drawing, heights, and interactions with certain animals are his occasional weaknesses. But overall, he is the most all-round hunger and host the show ever has.
Furthermore, combined with his win-loss record, he kind of reminds me of that man in F1. Similar to how Max is in Formula One in recent years, Zax's overall abilities across most challenges in the Hunger Games is spectacular. Or even beyond spectacular. But he doesn't always bring good reception. Some people love him, others not so much. And you know what? I totally get it. How I sometimes feel about Max is exactly the same on how I feel about Zax.
All of us feel the same way about Zax. But just to clarify, Zax is a good guy, no doubt, and none of us hate him. But sometimes, we just prefer to see him fall, because he has won too many. Just like what Kuhn once said in episode 286.
就是想要打败他，
对，就不喜欢让他赢。
对，因为他赢，就像你讲的，他就会一副很拽的样子。
When someone's that good, and when they keep winning, every little thing they do starts to get noticed. The good ones. And especially the controversial ones.
And from our research, here are some past controversies that ignited heated arguments across social media and PTT regarding Zax. Zax had that infamous moment of handing the victory to the opposing team on episode 76. Well, from the looks of what happened, he was too confident that he can win at the last moment, but one big blow cost the team. In that episode, according to the comments on PTT, most of the fans found what happened amusing, and did not really criticize on what happened. But then, in the last stage of the following episode, a similar story happened once again.
要比这个还要小嘛，比本店限定还要小的东西。对啊。好，我来。要比那个小真的不难啊！我说真的，那个。
不好意思，可以借 借我一个商品吗？我只要比较长就可以了。我可以借这个，等一下还你吗？谢谢哦。换你。
比这个长，比这个长。对，我。我很认真啊，比这个轻啊。OK。最后一样。
你们最后完了。哎呦，这个很失策。
我要考虑看看我要哪一个店家哎。最后一棒。我是最后一棒了啊。借鼻屎。这个有去过吗？没有。好像没有借童年时光的东西。童年时光就跟小朋友有关系，一定有比较小的。哎，老板娘你好，打扰了。我要借比那个东西还要小的。小的，其实说实在可以慢慢看哦，好多东西哦，因为我们领先太多了。我要选一个很彻底的，不能够失误。我这个如果一回去一失误就完蛋了。这个应该有比它，对不起，我可以拿一下牛角看一下重量。真的不好意思打扰。这个一定比它轻吧？对啊，是面包啊。OK， 好，那我可以跟你借这个吗？好，谢谢你哦。
回来了，快点。
折中了，比它轻。面包一定比木屐轻。
小，不要停。
小的鱼这种地方没有弹珠吗？你有卖弹珠不可能。老板，请问有弹珠吗？最后面是不是？哦，左手边。好，你有啊？你有弹珠？
你好，可以跟你借一个杯子吗？哥哥，谢谢你，谢谢哦。拿好。我回来了。谢谢。比他大就可以了。
王他们最后一样了。这池底很小啊，就这个喵咪的啊。各位，我们要喝就要喝健康的，养乐多。这个应该比较小的吧？养乐多应该 OK 的，慢慢走，真的不要急，不要跑步，危险。我们录，老板可以跟你借这个吗？借一下，对吗？好，我待会拿来还你，好不好？好，谢谢。Fine, it's okay. 他们赢了！
你在干嘛？
可以跟我解释一下？在干嘛？
老板娘，我爱你，借个杯子好不好？借杯子好，爱你。哦，谢谢哦，等一下马上回来哦。
这里，耶！
我们领先他们4样东西耶。
他追上我还
你刚刚是不是想说领先很多，然后跟陶哥开杠一下？对啊。王母，我已经第2次了，胜利明明就已经胜券在握，被你玩掉了。
南虎哥，快最后一棒哎，我发现南虎哥，我应该拿走。
我觉得我会被观众骂哎。等一下，我要是只有观众会骂，
我们也会骂你。
And as it was back-to-back episodes, heavy criticisms appeared, and a lot of the fans cannot get over Zax's mentality at that time, as he had ruined his team, and most importantly, Jason's victory 2 episodes in a row. Another example of those heated arguments from the internet was about Stage 2 in episode 380, where Zax's defense tactics on Wyan seemed over-aggressive. A lot of internet comments were heavily criticizing Zax's actions. But looking back at previous episodes on both of their interactions on the show, Wyan's performances in the past, as well as considering the fact that Zax is known for hitting below the belt, plus the fact that the Orange team did say that they did not consider about strategy in this stage, which led to them having to deal with the aggressive defense. With these reasons taken into consideration, in true honesty, a lot of those comments were not necessary. The third one would be the most argumentative story of them all, which is how devious Zax is in certain games. Especially in mind games, there are many cases over the history of this show. But in true honesty, as stated before in the previous case, it is not the first time that Zax is known for that quality. And although the host and other hungers still do occasionally complain about trusting him and then being tricked, it is quite funny to see that fans are much more sensitive and much more emotional towards these sort of behaviors from Zax than the hungers themselves. Mentioning once again, especially to those longtime fans, if Zax is already known for such behaviors on the show, what's the point in criticizing his actions?
From these three cases, many of the audience might start to question our focus in this episode is on criticizing Zax, as he seems to become the center of attention regarding any disputes that revolves around him. While we can probably say the first case is due to Zax's behavior, there is a common factor we found that is even more shocking in the second and third cases, which also happens to be the root of most arguments. From those involving Zax's actions, to other occurrences in which Zax is not involved.
Therefore, the factor we are focusing on is not Zax, but rather certain reactions from the fans. And that's when things get complicated. There's this pattern we've noticed, where any form of questioning or even a lighthearted criticism is seen as an attack. Not just on Zax, but everything in general. And it no longer is a discussion. It becomes a defense mechanism. And that somehow turns into a value that is seen as the proper behavior of a normal human.
As an American, it is very sad to see that this is the culture that is growing in Taiwan. But I am going to be very blunt right here. In most global communities, when a celebrity does something weird on TV, people laugh, they meme, they move on. But what we saw in the Hunger Games, or Taiwan in general, as we dive deeper into our research, was so different. It felt like, if you're not agreeing to the common behavior, or praising a certain individual, then you are seen as a rebel to the society.
And that mindset creates a hostile environment. Not just for people who is gradually understanding the culture, but also those that are from that culture who simply want to share their honest thoughts.
From a broad perspective, it's not about East versus West, nor is it about which culture is more open-minded, because the world is in this horrible state right now. However, if this behavior is even evident from something casual like a reality show, and no one gives a shit, that means the culture in Taiwan is in dire trouble. We don't expect everyone to listen, but we hope by introducing a serious factor we see in the Hunger Games, it allows everyone to critically reflect on. And if we purely focus on the show itself, we hope all fans reflect on how fan loyalty sometimes becomes fan fragility. And when that happens, the room for honest dialogue disappears. And eventually, people stop talking, or even start leaving, not because they don't care, but because they rather not be misinterpreted.
And as we analyzed this factor further, we started to understand why Henry was so hesitant in joining the discussion of this topic.
Because he had witnessed, and sometimes, was involved in these dilemmas. Probably some people remember. In the early episodes of this series, Objective has mentioned that Henry joined a Hunger Games community online, and he is part of the management team in that group. Throughout the time, he had to work out resolving arguments or disputes amongst some of the community members. There are times when Henry and other managers resolved it well, but Henry did have a few argumentative decisions due to his emotions affecting his judgment. But there is one case in particular that I really wanted to talk about.
To start off, I remember it was back in August 2024, in which I somehow saw a Facebook post of a fan expressing their anger about someone from a certain line group always purposely mistypes Zax's Chinese name on purpose. When I saw that post, I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Danny. At first, we did not fully understood what was going on. But our instincts tell us it has to be related to whatever has happened in the Line community group that Henry is in. We tried to ask him, but Henry still refused to respond to any of our questions we had asked. Probably he knew it was about this topic, and he showed his frustration towards this case. However, it wasn't a few hours later when we got the full story of what went on from Yusuke, which was unexpected for us.
I actually kept a secret from everyone, even Henry, who might be watching this premiere now. At that time, when the Hunger Games Line community link was shared with another chat group, and hundreds of eager members started to join in, I actually joined that group during that time, and had been undercover ever since. I never typed anything nor joining any of the conversations, but I have briefly scanned through the messages. The situation on that day was about a chat was revolving around Zax, as someone had mistyped Zax's Chinese name, but I couldn't tell whether it was intentional or accidental. However, one thing I can confirm is that another member got offended. Very offended indeed, and the argument of this misspelling, or unofficial nickname of Zax, went on for quite some time. And it wasn't just between two people, but rather one certain individual against a few die-hard fans of Zax. And after the storm has ended, I took matters into my own hands by taking screenshots of that chat history, and shared it to the team.
From what we saw, it wasn't malicious, just casual chat energy. But that die-hard Zax fan took it way too seriously. I mean, it's okay to defend their idols. But public execution over a suspected, constant typo, or constant use of an unofficial nickname. And then further developing when one of the members publicizes this minor misbehavior on Facebook. That behavior and mentality is so pathetic. I mean, we all understand the basic respect of correctly pronouncing, or typing, someone's name correctly, but a harsh dispute like that wasn't necessary. For us, we sometimes use nicknames we have given others under certain situations, especially when the mood of the group or conversation is rather not so serious, and we pick the right moments to do so. And what's worse, that individual who started this argument, and that fan who publicized whatever happened onto Facebook, was so disrespectful and aggressive to what others have to say, especially when the managers stepped in and attempted to put out that fire. It is evident that Henry could have intervened to prevent the escalation of the dispute, thereby demonstrating a deficiency in management aptitude on his part. However, it is noteworthy that those two members, who are steadfast supporters of Zax and have expressed their role as his supporters on numerous occasions, are regarded as the cancer of that group.
And because of what happened, we finally get the whole story of why Henry was reluctant to talk about this topic. Furthermore, we decided to take matters to our own hands regarding a secret surprise we wanted to provide to that Line community.
Danny and I originally thought of creating a fan-made PDF handbook. Something that contained all the best moments of the Hunger Games, from the first episode to the 10th anniversary. Well, we felt that the show could last to 10 years. Even more, so. Anyways, it was intended to be a little thank you for being part of the great community of this amazing Taiwan reality show. No marketing, no drama. Pure appreciation.
But, after that incident, we questioned whether the group even deserves this gift with such little tolerance of what happened. We even thought even further to what might happen, especially with a certain few demonstrating such mentality, and even looked back at what Henry said.
In the end, it felt like no matter what we did, even something kind, would just get viewed through a distorted lens. So, we pulled the plug and drafted a statement for Henry to announce to that Line community, though we believed none of them really cared about that anyway.
Thinking back on what we all experienced, maybe that's okay. Because what matters now isn't how people reacted back then, it's what we, and hopefully others, come to understand. This whole experience, the arguments, the silence, the frustration, it pushed us into something deeper. Not just about Zax, but about us, how we react, how we protect.
Not only that, we need to talk about how quickly fandoms, communities, can confuse loyalty with denial. How defending someone becomes more important than listening.
And this isn't just about a TV show in Taiwan. This is everywhere. We live in a world that's already so tense. Wars, protests, culture clashes, economic hardship. And in the middle of all this, people are exhausted. So sometimes, when something small challenges their comfort, they just explode or shut down.
We can't keep doing that. We can't keep acting like criticism means betrayal. We can't keep punishing people who just want to ask, are we okay with this? Being a fan doesn't mean ignoring reality. Being a fan should mean you care enough to ask difficult questions.
Zax is a good man. We've seen that. But being good doesn't mean he's beyond accountability or beyond discussion. That's the difference between idolization and humanization. And right now, in a world this divided, we need less idolizing and more humanizing.
This video is not just we need to talk about Zax. We need to talk about how we see people, how we react. If we've learned anything through this project, it's that if we want to build a community that lasts, we need to make space for disagreement.
We hope that someday, when someone else is being honest, even if it's uncomfortable, we'll choose to listen. Not just react and criticize.